grandfather, he gave me this little baby as a present. I have a nice grandfather, as you can imagine. And he could like see my passion for senses, so he gave me like a little still to do some experiments. And I was thinking, it's very easy to distill, at the end, especially when we make gin, yeah? So what we have is like neutral alcohol, basically vodka. I take the vodka, I pour it in. Yeah, that's about right. That's how we do it. We have juniper. I just bought like juniper in the supermarket. Moonshine Distillery in York in North England. It was awesome. In such a good time. It was like in a student house and everything was just like, you know how you had all these batches with the yeast and fermenting and you know, and I was doing all my experiments and always putting my alarm like 2 hours shifts to like swap everything, and I was running this huge moonshine distillery business, whatever. And at every student party you could realize like people drinking this like neat bottles made from this crazy German without a label. And I was like, what is that? It has like this crazy guy who makes it, and it's awesome. I'm like, yeah, cool. And I continued trying different spirits, and which I didn't understood, nothing tastes like whiskey, rum, you know, nothing tastes like the basic ingredient. Rum doesn't really taste like molasses or sugarcane juice, or like you got whiskey, which doesn't really taste like malted barley, and that's something I didn't understood. So, yeah, that's basically the point why I stopped, and I don't know.
Well, I have to say, I'm a little pissed that Nico didn't even manage to bring me a coat that fits well, which, you know, at my height it's quite difficult, obviously. But as you can see, I'm in charge of the geeky stuff for this afternoon session, and I truly appreciate Nico bringing his childhood to us and showing us a little of how he grew up. And it's a pleasure being here on stage with this gentleman and talking about delicatedirt and the question whether cleaner is always better, sort of. And I can tell you something straight away, it's probably not always. And as in life, it's about the little nuances and that quirky little details that turn something ordinary and bland and straight and clean into something wonderful and magical, mythical, and a bit more delicious, probably. So the good stuff. As we all know, water and ethanol are carriers of volatile aroma compounds. And the unique character of spirits totally depends on all these volatile aroma compounds and the quantity and quality of these. And as in life and with people, it's always close to the edges where we find the good stuff. And distillation is just the art of obtaining the right balance between these congeners and the amount of congeners that we want to have. Problem is, there's different types of alcohols. Some of them are nice, others probably less nice, and we need certain amounts of these congeners and these volatile aroma compounds to bring depth and complexity, and some of them are desirable in small quantities, of course, others we'd better leave aside. We'll throw a couple of really nice slides there. It's obviously for the short guys like myself with a white coat and thick glasses. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. We'll keep it short and simple. So don't be scared, don't run away, you'll get something to drink later on. So, we're producing a neutral spirit. Obviously we want to get rid of most of all the aromatic compounds. With other spirits, like certainly long and matured cask-aged spirits, or even fruit distillates, we want to remain, we want to contain some of these aroma compounds. It's about finding the equilibrium and finding the right balance, as always in life. You can compare it to a beautiful woman or a beautiful gentleman sitting next to you, lying next to you. You need a bit of character, you need a bit of edginess. It's about these perfect imperfections, if you will, that make life wonderful. And the composition composition and concentration of congeners totally depends on various factors. It's about the cultivar that we use from the very beginning. It's about fermentation, the yeast strain that we use, the duration of the fermentation, of course, and then the distillation, as Nico was showing you before. Certainly the maturation of all those spirits, how long and in what sort of vessel we age that stuff in. Well, and as you all know, during distillation, we're taking cut points and we're separating our distillate into the wonderful part in the middle, which is called the heart, and the less desirable stuff at the beginning and at the very end, foreshots and feints. And this is really where the magic happens and where we find all these desirable aromatic compounds. And we'll throw up a couple of them. So within the foreshots at the very beginning, usually there's the stuff that's causing a bit of your hangover and the not so desirable after effects. So we have aldehydes, for example, resulting from plant metabolism and the oxidation of ethanol. So Nico, in the meantime, is figuring out what's going on with the presentation. You're enjoying yourself there?
Yeah, love it.
I can see it. Aldehydes, as I said, plant metabolism, oxidation of ethanol. They have a very low boiling point of roughly 20.8 degrees centigrade. They are responsible for that pungent, sort of metallic, but also fruity aromas. These aldehydes are also what's causing the headache and the hangover on the next day. So a little might be desirable for fruity touch. Most of it we rather get away with. Acetones, another beautiful stuff. I think it was a bit early in the presentation.
Where's it?
Yes, there we go. We're getting to that. Acetone, simplest form of a group called ketones. You might know it as cleaning or solvent agent. Reminds most people of nail polish because it actually is nail polish. And now we get into the more interesting stuff, like the esters, naturally occurring chemicals that are related to fruit odors. So they're formed by intercellular processes through yeast activity when we have like all the yeast and condensing of carboxylic acids with alcohol, called ester synthesis. And there's two main groups of esters, which we all would like to have in our spirits in certain quantities. There's acetic esters, formed by acetic acid, as the name might tell you, and higher alcohols. And then there's ethyl esters. So a couple of interesting ones here. Isoamyl acetate, most present in beer, wine, sake, and all that stuff. It's got a little banana-ish sort of odor to it. Beautiful fruity notes that we're going to discover in our distillates that we're going to show you. There's isopentyl acetate, raspberry sort of aroma, fresh appley notes, and then there's phenyl ethyl acetate, which reminds you more of honey and roses and all these beautiful floral aromas. So you might be wondering, is there something to drink at this presentation? Yes, there is. And please feel free to grab your first glass and we'll sample our first liquid here. As I always say with tasting, there's no right or wrong. I'd like you to share your impressions, your thoughts, whatever you have in mind, in your glass, in your nose, please feel free to share. Anybody got an idea what's in front of you? It's a perfect example of these beautiful, fruity, lush, mellow tones that you want to have in there. So this is a lot of beautiful ester components that will give you that fruity touch, probably reminding you of pears, apples, and you certainly get a bit of that banana-ish effect in there, which makes for that sweetness, that mellowness, that roundness. Did you have a try?
Not yet. Please. Very kind, thank you.
Since he's been distilling since age 7 or something, he's going to tell you everything about it.
Well, that's actually the point, yeah? If you look at that, beautiful, isn't it? You've got a very, impressive, very well made Williams Birnbrand, yeah? So this is like the traditional German way of distilling spirits. What you do is you have your source of flavor, like the fruit or like a herb or whatever, and the goal is to like transport the flavor through distillation and to concentrate it. That's what you have here. You have like this very beautiful, rich, pear flavor in your nose. But then if you take the second glass, and that's the point which I don't get. This is distilled out of fresh sugarcane juice. I don't know if you have ever tasted fresh sugarcane juice, but this is not how it tastes, if you know what I mean. Like sugarcane juice, like this very grassy, fresh flavor, and this is something like, I don't know, you know. We have like a dirty style of alcohol rum, which is distilled out of 100% fresh sugarcane juice. But the thing is, what happens, am I switching? Yeah. Like if you look at that, yeah? Was that made in Germany? What do you think? Huh? Not really.
How do you call it? Gesundheitsamt or something?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I just had at my production place, yeah, I just had the Gesundheitsamt over to like check if everything was neat and stuff, and they were like taking samples of my lamps, you know, like if there was dirt on it, like the lamps. They don't touch anything. So it's very the typical German way. Everything is very clean. Everything is made in order. Everything that is rules, you know, and that's why we are able to produce something like the first sample you had, very clean, very nice, beautiful flavor. You have exactly what the fruit gives you. You have in your spirit as well, and that's like the interesting part, and why all these other countries, they produce something completely different, and why we in Germany, we aren't really able to produce such great whiskies and rums, if I just can put it all together. But you're going to say something about that, don't you? Yeah, please, feel free. It's up to you. I talk too much.
Anyways, like, the beautiful thing is, when you're smiling at that glass, you might have a certain picture in mind. Probably not that one, even though that's where the stuff comes from. But you see the Caribbean, you see the beaches and the water, and you have all these wonderful experience pictures in your mind. Because spirits have that beautiful power to transport us to different places and to make us feel good and enjoy ourselves and appreciate and embrace beautiful moments together. Nobody's ever going to sit down and say, it's that beautiful isoamyl putrate or acetate that I have in my glass, even though that's the stuff that's causing whatever you're smelling and tasting. But of course, knowing that will give you more background information, and it will give you a better understanding of the spirit. But ultimately, then it comes down to how can we possibly translate that into understandable, perceivable, and like words that we can all share and that we can talk about. And all these beautiful aroma and flavor compounds and these nuances are what gives a spirit character. And the real difficulty and what makes a great spirit, whereas other spirits might be more mediocre, is really finding that perfect cut point, finding the right way to keeping that equilibrium of desirable and not so desirable aromas. So when we move over to the third glass, where is it? Over here. Compared to the second glass, in the second glass, it was like boom. It was like the brightest high ester aroma that you could possibly imagine. Here with the third glass, it's all a bit more restrained. You get a lot of these vanilla and caramel notes, obviously coming from the cask, from cask maturation. You can also see the color that's it's been aged. But other than that, you do not get a lot of these classical ester characteristics from the distillate. And that's been the case with a lot of whiskies or cask matured spirits, especially from the German-speaking countries, from the GSA region, because their background is in eau de vie distillation, in fruit brandy distillation, where it's all about super clean cuts, like the most narrow middle part, where you just want to preserve the pear in its most delicate and most nuanced essence and nothing else, but you're missing a bit of that fattiness in the front and in the back.
So that's a German whiskey, what you're having now? number 3.
It is.
Okay.
And it's very cask driven. Like, you're probably missing a bit of that oomph, a bit of that impact, a bit of dirt that gives character to the spirit and makes it, especially through a lengthy period of cask maturation, characterful and more aromatic.
Well, you know, that's funny that you said that, like, because if you think about it, yeah? When you work at your bar and you have these like young bartenders who just started working and they come to your place and they're like, oh yeah, awesome, I know what to order and stuff, yeah? And the bar's very busy and they want a fancy old fashioned and you're like, oh, fuck off, yeah? And this is like they got the whole passion and they want to show everybody their passion. And that's basically what happened to me when I started distillation. And finally, when I turned 18, so I was in the legal age of drinking, I went to visit Scotland's distilleries. So I went over, I was like totally excited, I was like jumping around and stuff, yeah? So I started asking like questions and I started, like as I explained to you before, I started distillation by distilling fruit brandies. So I went over to Scotland, I was quite like, I was wondering like what's happening here. Like everything is licking and you know, they're doing something and nobody could really answer me any questions. And I started to ask even more questions, so the like tour guide was a bit overwhelmed with me. He was like, oh fucking hell, he's so annoying. So he got like the master distiller, he came over. And I started to ask him all these questions. So I could see that you are doing that, but why are you not doing that? Why are you not changing that? And he was like trying to explain to me, but after a certain time you could see he didn't have any answers left. So he just looked at me and said, listen, I'm doing what my father told me, and he was doing what his grandfather told him, so why would you want to change something which is so good? What I want to tell you is they have no idea what the fuck they're doing, basically. They just do what works. And with like the understanding of German fruit brandy perfection, distilling and fermentation, we don't achieve these results because we think too much. That's basically the point. And if you now take your fourth glass, yeah, take your time with this one. Don't stick your nose too deep in because it's quite intense. This is a Hampton cask strength bottling, like a Bellier Hampton estate from Jamaica. And what you can see here is like how they produce today. It wasn't in like 1890 or something, it's today. Like they actually advertise that with their wooden floors and stuff. And you would think like, this is kind of disgusting if you think about it. Like it's just open fermentation, yeah? They never clean. They're proud of that they never clean, literally. And you think like, this is not possible because, you know, food poisoning or whatever. So what they do is like, they put their molasses inside here. They don't add any yeast. They just take the yeast which is like in the surrounding. And yeah, it's a wild fermentation. And during this wild fermentation, there's no control whatsoever. So you have lots of like flavors developing. And then they leave it there for like even 2 more weeks just to rest and to have some other.
So if you're wondering what's developing during fermentation, I'll throw a couple more Latin words at you. So you've got 1-propanol, which is formed during fermentation. Thanks to Nico. It's part of the fusel oils. Well, we always say fusel oils. Actually, it's better described as fusel alcohols because it's part of the higher alcohols. They just have a slightly oily texture, so hence the nickname, right? Besides 1-propanol, we've got butyl alcohol. It's appearing during the fermentation of sugars and other carbohydrates, obviously. It's also got that banana-like aromatic note, which you will certainly find in the 4th class. And you'll get a lot of the mouthfeel from all these higher alcohols, all these fusel alcohols. They're bitter compounds, actually. You've got butanol, amyl, and propanol. Fancy stuff. Very water soluble, and some of them, of course, you will obtain or keep in the distillate after distillation, and that's finally what gives character. So remember, when you smell that glass, you've got all these ester compounds, you've got all these wonderful higher alcohols, all stuff that's appearing during fermentation, and then it's the art during distillation to keep the stuff that you actually want to have in order to obtain such an aromatic and flavorful spirit.
Exactly, and that's like the very complicated part. So lots of my work is to show German and Swiss and Austrian fruit brandy distillers how to do proper cask aging. And basically what I tell them is to work less clean. They're like, what? So basically what I'm trying to tell them, like if you're going to a chef and say, like if you want a proper steak, just burn it. Just burn it. And they're like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, yeah, fuck it, just burn it. So like, they can't do it, you know? It's like, they have done that all these years and they can't change it anymore. And I mean, stick to that, yeah? Just soak it in. So what happens literally when they empty it, they don't clean it, and that's actually the very interesting part, and that's actually why it's quite, how you call it, hygienic? Is that the right word, yeah? And that's something what we wouldn't understand because with our, we clean.
Nico, you were just turned off. Nico, you can get the thick one here. Like that. There you go. Well, obviously Nico's talking so much, so they just turned him off.
So basically what happens, when you clean a surface, yeah, you got like bacteria which are taking place. But all kinds of bacteria, bad bacteria and good bacteria. But what do we have here? Because they don't clean it, the bacteria which are already there, they're very dominant. So like bad bacteria which you don't want, they can't get in there because they can't find any food or anything. Because these bacteria which you actually want, they are there and they're too strong for the others. Does that make sense? Yeah? And that's basically why this is actually clean. Not in the German way, but it's clean. I mean, yeah, this is like the wild fermentation. These are private pictures. It's not like an advertising. Yeah, this is from my cellar. Yeah. Well, these like private pictures, real pictures which we took ourselves. So it's not like something bought or anything. And look at these stills. We talk about wooden stills sometimes still. Like these stills are sometimes more than 100 years old and they use the same wood and they refill that all the time. It's nothing like not metal or anything. Something we can't imagine. And all these bacteria inside, they again give this richness and flavor profile to it. They're adding anything. So like, yeah, lots of stuff happening. It's amazing, isn't it? It's so simple. Yeah. I can't see that. Yeah.
So we're gonna let Nico taste his gin. And like really to round it all off, we gave you a little more in-depth explanation of all these aroma compounds that really make a spirit characterful. And it's not about getting all too geeky in like white coats and all the nerdy stuff, but the better understanding that we have of what makes spirits beautiful and characterful, the better we will understand what we have in the glass, how we can appreciate it, how we can work with it, and how we can probably use it in drinks, how we can work with it in delicious cocktails, or just to get a better understanding of different operations, how people actually produce their stuff, and to appreciate what they're doing. Our idea was from the very beginning that cleaner is not always better, and we all know that when we taste different spirits. As I described before, it's like the most wonderful character.
It wasn't me.
Oh yeah?
I don't think so.
Thank you. It's about the perfect imperfections. And keep in mind that a great spirit needs a little character. And it needs to be just a slight little bit rough around the edges to bring something to the table that you won't find elsewhere.
Exactly. Well, basically the main point is if you have something which is produced too clean and it's too, what you call filigrane, if you know what I mean.
Delicate?
Yeah. If you have two delicate flavors, then you age it in a cask, yeah? So with cask-aged spirit, as you know, it's aged in white oak, yeah? And you have the influence of the cask to the spirit. And when it's too delicate, you have no flavors which are able to keep up with the flavor of the oak. So like the oak becomes overpowering and you lose all the character. And by working less clean, by having more of these Fuselöle, yeah, as you said earlier, this is actually at the end of the day which gives you the complexity. So at the beginning it tastes very rough and it's not very nice, but over the time, this is a character which keeps up with the wood, and you achieve a result which you can't achieve when you work too clean. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's like the whole secret, basically.
At the end of the day, a great spirit is like Nico. A little rough around the edges, but altogether wonderful. So thank you very much for being here, enjoying this tasting with us, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Any questions? Please feel free, if you have questions, drop us an email. Nico wasn't able to stick his contact information into the PowerPoint presentation, so you can just hit him up afterwards.
I'm not able to do that.
He's not the most technical guy, even though he's been distilling since age 7. Yeah. So drop me an email, find me on Instagram, call me. Birds, everything, smoke signs, it's all good. I appreciate your feedback and your thoughts, and have a great rest of the BCB.
Are there any questions for now? Yeah? Magst du das Mikrofon machen?
I just wanted to know what was in there. So this is Hampton and the other ones?
The first one was Marder Williamsbirne, it's Birnbrand. The second one was Trois Rivières, bottled at 55 ABV. The third one was, we're not talking too nice about German, I don't know, a German whiskey, yeah. And the last one, it's Villiers, bottling from Villiers, Hampton Estate, 2010 single cask. Thomas, ich komme zu dir.
So your point was that you recommend other distilleries to work less clean, but your references are all distilleries which are there for decades and centuries perhaps. Do you think this is also workable for new operations? Because if you do a new operation, you usually use all that you have clean fermentation tanks, you have buildings where there's no history and so on usually. So wouldn't it be more advisable for them to work a product like the pear one here? Because that's the style you can achieve when you're a new distillery. What's your thought on that?
Well, what we showed you were like the two extremes. Okay, so the first one was like this very well produced clean spirit, and the other one was a